Hello everyone. In this video, we will be discussing some of the assignment or some tutorial questions that will be kind of gives us a overall review of what we have done till now. We have discussed many important topics, and these are some of the important questions that I have extracted from these topics. So I'll not do them for you, you have to do it for yourself, but I will explain each and every question, try to explain them, and try to explain the importance of these questions. So let's see this. So the first question is the difference between the rigid body and a deformable body. So we have already shown you here in this one. We have discussed the importance of the rigid body and deformable body. So the difference is, you know, that a rigid body cannot be deformed. However, a deformable body is a body that can be deformed, and certain constitutive relationships can be applied on that. So you know the difference. I have explained this very thoroughly to you. The second question that we would like to discuss is what is the main difference between a stress and a pressure. Now these two terms are mostly used interchangeably many times, as people have a lot of confusion between the difference between a stress and a pressure, because both of them have the same units, MPa. So stress is also measured in MPa and pressure is also measured in MPa. So what are the major differences? So as a part of the stress tensor, you have seen that a particular body, where you have the particular element, and let's say in a three-dimensional, when you have particular element, then on a particular face, like on this face, the stress vector T may be oriented at any orientation on this plane, depending upon its normal. It may be oriented at any orientation, but the vector that is along the normal, that particular vector is a pressure vector. So pressure basically has only a component rather than a vector. So in this case, this is a stress vector for me. However, if my stress component is completely along the normal, so let's say this is 1 axis 1, so my stress or pressure or stress component will be 1 1. So this will be stress component. So any component that is perpendicular or along the normal to the plane, that particular component or the stress, when it is aligned along the normal, that type of stress is also known as pressure. So pressure is when the stress is perpendicular to the plane, when the stress is perpendicular to the plane. There are certain other differences. So the perpendicular component will be the pressure. So apart from this, as I said, pressure always acts normal to the surface. However, the stress may act at any angle. You can make this tensor T. As you rotate this element, the stress vector T may be oriented at different angles, but the case in which the vector is along this, normal to this, will be the pressure component. Further, it is also seen that pressure is a scalar quantity. It's not a tensor quantity. It's a scalar quantity. However, the stress is a second order tensor. Further, there are other differences also. I mean, in terms of somewhere in terms of measurement also, pressure is measured by a pressure gauge or a manometer. You have a pressure gauge or manometer. So you have done some of the physics and chemistry experiments. You have seen manometers or barometers. So pressure are used to pressure are measured by these instruments. However, stress cannot be measured directly. For the measurement of stress, you have to measure the load. So as I said in one of the earlier videos, as you have seen, there is a this is kind of a dog bone specimen that we used to test in the universal testing machine, which is also called as UTM. We used to test these types of samples. If we load these samples, actually what we did, we used to fix it from one side and load it from other side. So that's the same thing. So if we load this sample, then it is gripped through this under the jaws, and then it is being pulled. So what you get from this, you get a load versus displacement curve. I have explained this in the earlier video also. You get a load, P load, and a displacement delta curve. So get a curve like this, somewhere like this. This is what the curve you get. Now this is load. So how to obtain the stress from this? Load, or your UTM, only gives you a load. So there is a the thing that is pulling this has a load cell. Load cell used to measure the amount of force applied. So UTM gives the force, and then we have a scale placed here like this that used to give us the displacement delta. But let me tell you, this delta is always, it's usually not correct. So it's always recommended that you put a strain gauge here and then measure a strain. However, for stress, what you do? For stress, you have a load. You divide the load by the area. Area of what? Of the gauge. This region is called as gauge region. Is called as a gauge region. So in this gauge region, you take a cross section like this, along this. So in this cross section, this will be the width W times the thickness T. So area will be W times the thickness. So P upon A will be the stress. That's okay, I guess. So this is how we used to measure the stress. But even in this, there is a bit of discrepancy. What is the discrepancy? The way you are measuring the area. See, the area while loading this sample used to go on contract. As the sample is loaded, as the force is increasing, this gauge region becoming more and more contracted. It's becoming more and more thinner due to the Poisson's effect. So the area is changing. So you are not incorporating that change in this. You have just put the original W and the L. Original W and the thickness. So WT will be the area. So this type of stress in which we used to put the load and the original area. That means the actual area. This type of stress is called as engineering stress. Engineering stress. But there is another way people used to do it. Since the actual stress will be, what will be the actual stress? Actual stress will be load upon the dynamic area that is reducing. That will be the actual area with respect to load. So how to measure the reducing area? You used to measure the reducing area with the help of these vernier calipers. Every time you are loading the samples and you are taking the readings at each and every point. You are taking the reading by simple vernier calipers. So these will be the dynamic area at each and every point. So this will be goes on for you as a lower and lower for you. So you place this, take the thickness, take the width, and record that. Take the thickness, take the width, record that. So this usually happens in a dynamically. So the dynamic P upon adynamic. This type of stress is known as true stress. True stress. And mostly true stress is used in industries because this is the actual stress. As the name goes, it's the true stress, actual stress. So it's mostly used in the industry for the proper and the correct calculations. But in the theory, as a study material, we used to mostly go through the engineering stress only. So you can measure the stress through this, and then don't measure the load through the displacement given by this. There is various factors that actually gives you a wrong displacement. So we used to put a strain gauge here. Sometimes people also measure the strain by extensometer. That's a different thing. But you can measure strain by putting the strain gauges on the two sides and recording it. You can directly get it. Because if you measure it through this, there is some slipping also occurring. There is loosening of the grips through the jaws. So this also eats up your displacement. Displacement usually doesn't come proper. So you cannot directly write the strain here as the change in length by the original length. No. That will be technically correct, but in experimentally, this usually doesn't happen because of the different errors occurring in the experiments. So let's make it short. I'm trying to explain you these things because they might not have been covered during the lecture. So this is what the main difference between the stress and the pressure is. Further, there may be another difference that the magnitude of the pressure remains same or constant in all the directions. However, the magnitude of stress may vary in certain directions. It may be one of the difference. Further, with the help of a neat sketch, show that the stress tensor is symmetric. This I have already told you to do it. That your shear component tau xy is equals to tau yx. And how will you show this? You will use a principle of angular momentum, linear momentum, angular momentum. Use a principle of angular momentum to prove this. It's a very simple exercise. I hope you can do this. Let's come to the fourth question. Define the complete state of stress at a point and write the stress tensor for the following conditions. What are the conditions? Triaxial state of stress and pure shear state of stress. So this I have already shown you what are the loading conditions. Let me show you they have shown you for a typical uniaxial loading case. This is one of the case. Triaxial state of stress, biaxial state of stress, pure shear. So you have to write the stress tensor. Just write it like that, so you'll be able to understand what these state of stresses, state of stress is. Further, one thing that kind of left during the video, that expand the following tensor notations into equations by summing over ing. So as I said, there is these types of thing. Ti equals to sigma ij nj, and what is this? This is a Cauchy's equation, and sigma ij comma j plus fi is equal to 0 is the equilibrium equation. So I want you to expand them. And how to expand them? By summing over ing. So this is a very famous Einstein notation known as Einstein's summation notation. So Einstein has used this notation because in mechanics and other classical mechanics there is a lot of equations available. So but they are somewhere related to they are in pattern, they are repeating in pattern. So Einstein said that let's assemble them in some short form. Like you just see, like we have a vector v. Okay, so this vector v, you can write this like this, or you can write vi. So vi will be composing of v1 I plus v2j plus v3k. These are the v1, v2, v3 are the components along the x, y and z directions, or I, j and k. So vector can be represented like this. So these will be the magnitude and these will be the unit vectors. So now we know that we are only dealing with the three axes only, x, y and z. So summation over I and j will be either you take 1 2 3, either you take x y z. So how to do this? Let's I will try to explain you with this equation, Ti equals to sigma ij nj. So if you are doing something like this, so Ti equals to sigma ij nj. So first sum over I. So once you sum over I, how will you do it? Tx equals to sigma xj nj. Now stop. Now sum over j. Internally sum over j. And what it will be? It will be equal to sigma xx nx. Now put x for j plus sigma x will remain x, then j will assume value of y and y, plus j will assume value of z, sigma x z and z. So this becomes your first equation. So you have taken first sum over x, then internally you have taken x, y and z. Then you can take sum over, you are now summing over I, so you will be getting sigma ty equals to sigma yj nj. Now again sum over j. So sigma xy, sigma yx nx plus sigma y and y plus sigma y z and z. So you have to put nx, ny and z because it's repeating, and you have to do like this. So once you drive them, you will find that you will lead up to the same three equations that we have. And a similar way you will also, I request you to do this one also, this equilibrium equation, sigma ij comma j. Comma means derivative. So sigma ij comma j means, that means it's a derivative, del sigma ij by del x j. It's a derivative over j. So further, in another question, a state of stress at a particular point inside the body is given. So its state of stress is given, sigma x, sigma y, sigma z, and the shear stresses are given. Calculate the body forces in order to achieve the equilibrium. So what you will use this? Take the equilibrium equation and obtain the derivatives. Okay, and then you will be having a body forces also. Equate them to the body forces. So you will be obtaining body forces in x, y and z directions in terms of xyz. In terms of xyz, just have to differentiate them, basic differentiation, and just calculate the body forces. Further, in another question, a state of plane stress element is shown. Find the principal stresses and maximum shear stress. This we have already done. Explain how principal stresses are important from the designer's point of view. I have extensively told you what are principal stresses and why they are important. So just check out that video, and I request you to do this in terms of figures also. That means when you obtain the principal stresses, and also I request you to do this by Morse circle. So when you obtain the principal stresses, after obtaining principal stresses, also draw the figures. Okay, try to draw the figures, and once you obtain the other things, orientation, etc., try to give a figure and try to take out the differential element and try to orient them along the principal axis and show the orientations also. Okay, now next question. So with the help of neat sketch, write the working principle of strain rosettes. This I have already told you in one of the videos, how to write the strain rosettes. What are strain rosettes? They are the arrangement of different strain gauges for you. Another question. Using stress variation over the element, drive the 3D equilibrium equation Cartesian coordinates. So equilibrium equation you have to drive in a Cartesian coordinates. I have already told you to drive these equations. These are very simple way of driving them. Take the variation over the element and just drive the equation. This will be a bit of difficult to drive the 2D equilibrium equation polar coordinates. So I request you can refer any of the books and check out how to obtain the polar coordinates, or you can try it by yourself. First try it by yourself, then you can go and check in the book also. And Then we have another question coming up. The stress system at a point is given by a normal stress along the x, and one of the other stress tensile along the y, and the shear is given. Find the principal stresses and the planes. Planes means, that means once the principal stresses, you have shown the principal stresses acting, then you have to show the orientation of the planes also. So you have to do this. The another thing is very important: show the stresses and planes in a neat sketch. You have to draw each and every one. You have to solve each and every question with the help of neat and clean diagrams. So with the help of diagrams, you will be able to understand much better what we are trying to do. Then plot the stress strain diagram for ductile and brittle materials and label the figures and the significance of these terms. The proportional limit. Proportional limit is very close to the yield point. It's very close. I've already told you, like in this one, when you draw a stress strain diagram, I've already shown you it will go like this, somewhere like this. So proportional limit is like this and a yield limit is like this. Proportional limit means the point till the proportional limit, the Hooke's law is valid. That means the stress is proportional, remains proportional to the strain. And then the elastic limit. So that is somewhere both of them together combined together, taken as an elastic limit. That is the same point, approximately equal to the same point. Elastic region, elastic region. Then we have already told you what is the yield point. Then approved strength. Now I request you to just guess what exactly proof strength is, and try to show them on this graph. I will not tell you this. I will not tell each and everything for you. So just find it out in the video. Okay. And then the ultimate strength. I have already told you what the ultimate strength is, the maximum one. Correct. This will be the ultimate strength. There is another question here of strain rosettes. So the strain measured using 45-degree rosettes are shown like this. Find the principal strains, maximum shear strains, and also find the principal stresses. Now you can very easily find the principal strains, and you can find the maximum shear by using the same things I have already told you in that video. But here is one more thing written. Find also the principal stresses. How you will find the principal stresses? By using the generalized Hooke's law. By using the generalized Hooke's law. That's why E is given to you. That's why Poisson's ratio is given to you. So use these equations and try to find the principal stresses. I leave it to you. Further, can Mohr's circle be tangential to the shear axis? That's a question for you. If yes, how the stress system for this would look like? Okay, so these are for you. I request you to do this. Remember that whenever you put or whenever you solve anything, like for example, this is somewhat the Mohr circle is sigma and tau. So if your diameter line is properly aligned only on this, that means your first point is this and second point is this, and then you have drawn a Mohr circle, then you don't have a shear stress. I hope you know what I mean here. That means you have used a sigma 1 or a normal stress sigma x and sigma y. You don't have a shear stress. So you have to make the Mohr circle. Mohr circle will be like this. You will be having tau max always. You will not be having a shear on that plane, the principal plane, but tau max will be having. So just consider these points. I've given you the hint how to do it. Further, there is some other state of stresses are given. So you have to sketch the Mohr circle for the stress in the different cases, following cases of plane stress. Different loading conditions are being given, and I request you to please do this. This is very important. You will be able. This doesn't include any calculation. Just you have to make the Mohr circle and ensure that it remains within these loading conditions, given loading conditions. And the last question, which will be the last one, the state of a stress at a point. A matrix is given to you. Find the principal stresses and principal planes. Use eigenvalue analysis. So you have to do this with the help of eigenvalue method. So how you'll do this? Take a determinant of this and obtain the principal stresses. Once you have obtained the principal stresses corresponding to each principal stresses, obtain the vectors, the principal vectors or the principal plane. The principal vectors will give you the orientation of the principal planes. Once you have obtained the vectors, then you can find the orientation very easily, and x and y and z. So that I have already told you in very detail. So I hope you can do this for granted. And remember that whenever you solve these numerical problems, always draw a figure. Draw a figure of the take the element, or take just the 2D element. Don't have to show all the stress components. Just you can show the 2D element. If you are comfortable, you can show the 3D element as well. Show the element, show the orientations it is experiencing, and then do the finishing touch. So I request you to do these things. This will be uploaded in a Google Classroom. You will be having this, and thank you for this. Okay.